Hello, I'm Robin. Welcome to Bookspin. Today I'd like to talk about The Lovers by Philip José Farmer. That's this book. This novel edition published in 1961, although this story originated as a novella published in a magazine in 1952. So it's got quite an interesting publication history. And this is an author who I've been meaning to get back into. He's one of my favourite sci-fi authors, but I haven't read much by him recently. So I picked up this book recently and I thought it'd be interesting to read. It's one of his best known works, and it's also, I think, his earliest published story. So when it was originally published as a novella in the early 50s, it caused quite a splash on the SF scene. It broke the mold and explored some pretty controversial themes for the time, especially the great sex taboo. So what Farmer does here is he constructs quite a captivating tale, I think, of an interspecies romance set against a backdrop of strange alien biology and interstellar colonization and religious tyranny. So it's certainly an impressive debut, I think, for his SF career. And in fact, Farmer was subsequently awarded a Hugo for the best new SF author the year after this story was first published, and the first person to receive this award. So this is the expanded 1961 novel edition that I read. There's also another third edition, a revised edition, which came out in 1979. I'm not sure how that compares to the previous two versions, but this is the one that I read. In any case, it's an interesting read. It's a fast-paced novel. There's no shortage of intriguing ideas and world building. And for a book of its size, there's a lot to unpack, I think. Essentially, this is a story about one man's love affair with an alien being on another planet. But the true nature of this relationship and the transformative effects that it has on the protagonist's psyche and the mind-boggling conclusion that it leads up to, these are what makes this a really fascinating story, I think. I don't think it's necessarily Farmer's best work, but it's certainly a good showcase for what he's capable of. So let's talk a little bit about what this book's about and why it deserves to be recommended, I think. So this story is set against the backdrop of a dystopian post-apocalyptic society, and it's set in the far future, the year 3050, I think. And following an epic, devastating war that took place in the past, which is known simply as the Apocalyptic War, the world order has drastically changed in quite Orwellian fashion. The world has been divided into just a handful of giant superstates who are in perpetual competition with each other. And we have a protagonist who's called Hal Yarrow, who is a citizen of the Hijack Union, which is one of these states. And it appears to be the successor state to the United States and various other countries. And this giant superstate is an extremely repressive theocracy governed by an institution called the Sturch, i.e. the state church. So this is the society that Hal lives in, and he is a linguist. That is his profession. And early on in the story, he gets commissioned by the government to join a colonization mission on a starship to go to a distant planet, an exoplanet known as Ozagon. So this is how the story starts off. Now, Hal is at the start of the story. He's trapped in an empty and loveless marriage. So he gladly accepts this mission as the only way he can leave his wife, because in the hijack union, the only legal grounds for divorce are barrenness, adultery, and interstellar travel. So this is his way out, and he joins the crew. Off he goes to this planet on this expedition. It is in fact an imperialistic mission because this planet is already inhabited by a native intelligent species and civilization that the hijack union intends to subjugate and exploit and possibly do things even worse than that, which I won't spoil. But these alien beings are called the Wogglebugs, okay? And they are a sapient race of insectoid beings whose language Hal is assigned to learn. So I found the biology of these creatures, as they're described in this book, quite compelling. They're described as insectoid because we can trace their evolutionary history on their planet as arthropods or something like arthropods. I think the term he uses is pseudo-arthropods, something like that. However, they're not really invertebrates, as they possess a skeleton and a spine. But unlike the backbone of a mammal, their spine is positioned in the anterior of their body. So I thought this was quite an intriguing idea. As try as I might, I found it quite hard to visualize what these creatures look like in my mind. So I think it would have been very interesting to see an artist's impression of one of these creatures. In any case, the Wogglebugs have an advanced civilization, but they lag behind Earth's level of technology. So the hijacked Earthmen hope to exploit this, and they make first contact with the Wogglebugs. They keep a secret their ultimate agenda of a violent, hostile takeover of the planet. So there's definitely some malicious political intrigue going on. But besides these two races, the Wogglebug natives and the Earth people, there is in fact a third race, a third intelligent species that exists on this planet. And that's where this strange love affair comes into play that is central to this story. So while Hal is on this planet and exploring some ancient ruins, he comes into contact with a strange and beautiful woman in hiding called Jeanette. And she is explained to be a remnant of a dying race of long-lived humanoid natives. Okay. He forms an instant bond with this alien woman, and he agrees to conceal her from both the Wogglebugs and his Earthmen comrades. So their relationship deepens, and while this happens, we learn that she actually seems to have a mixed human and alien heritage, and that her species survived by breeding with a forgotten line of French colonists who settled on this planet many generations ago. And she, in fact, speaks a strange dialect of degenerate French, which Hal, as a linguist, can just about understand. So she's part human, part alien. Or at least that's what she seems to be. Things do get a little bit complicated later on. But anyway, they fall in love. She's also an incredibly efficient learner. She picks up Hal's language very quickly. And despite all of their vast cultural differences, they've got very different beliefs and values and language and so on. Hal becomes besotted with her, and as their relationship deepens, she opens up his mind to all different kinds of things and new ways of living, new ways of being. Hal, of course, comes from an extremely puritanical and sexually repressive society, and she's very much the opposite of that. She's quite unrestrained, free thinking, a free spirit. So she definitely opens up his mind. But of course, it's a forbidden love affair. Unconsecrated sexual relationships are not allowed in Hal's society. And not only is she a fugitive, but her very alienness is seen as essentially subversive to the social order. So it's a classic case of forbidden and probably doomed romance. Hal does everything he can think of to try and stay together with her, of course. But this is where the story starts to get really interesting. And I'm not going to reveal anything more in case you want to read it for yourself. But this romance develops in a very intriguing way. And all I can say is everything is leading up to an incredible reveal at the end of the story that adds a fascinating layer of complexity to Hal and Jeanette's relationship. So as sci-fi endings go, this is definitely a good one. It's up there with classic twists like the likes of The Dark Forest and Inverted World, these kind of endings which are very memorable to me in my reading experience. So I can definitely recommend this book. I found the development of Hal and Jeanette's characters interesting and satisfying to read. The plot was very intriguing, and there are a lot of interesting ideas that get thrown into the world building, which I've only just touched on. The sociopolitics of Earth society, the planet Ozagon, the remarkable xenobiology of the Wogglebugs. There's just a lot to unpack here. It's not a perfect novel. I think I had a slight issue with the pacing sometimes. When I was reading this, it felt kind of obvious at points that this was a novella that's just been expanded. There are chapters early on in the story, for example, set on Earth, which feel like they've just been tagged on to enrich the world building. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I do think the novel version would have benefited from further expansion, I think, a slowing of pace every now and then to allow more room for characterization, character building. I think this would have made the story of Hal and Jeanette's love affair and the conclusion that it leads up to all the more emotionally impactful. So I think if you've read this, you'll probably understand what I mean by this. But in any case, overall, this is a very solid, short SF novel. Definitely a worthy read, I think. I would give The Lovers 4 stars. It's another Philip Jose Farmer classic. I will be returning to him again soon with his short story collection, The Grand Adventure. Let's see if I can find it up here. That's this book. Another one which I picked up quite recently. I do like the look of this book. There he is on the back. So yeah, I'm definitely going to read this one before the year is out. But that's all for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.